Hi, welcome to Why the Book Wins. My name is Laura, and today's video is part of a series I do where I compare books with their movie adaptations. And through these videos, I discuss why the majority of the time, when it comes to the book versus movie, the book wins. Now, having said that, I enjoy watching movies just as much as I enjoy reading books. Like, I love both. So I do give unbiased reviews of both book and movie, I think, for the most part. I also wanted to let you know that this is available as a podcast, and so these tend to be about 30 minutes long, but especially for ones that go over that, if it just works better for you to listen to it as a podcast, they are available. So just search Why the Book Wins in whatever podcasting platform you use. I will also link to them down below for Spotify and Google Podcast. For Spotify and Apple Podcasts, because those are the ones most people use. So yeah, if you would rather do that, those are available too. And before we get into this video, I do want to say that there will be spoilers for both the book and the movie. So if you plan on reading the book or watching the movie and do not want it spoiled, then go do that first and then come back and watch this video. And I guess that about wraps it up as far as intro stuff. Aside from, I would love it if you subscribe to my channel if you love book-related content, and I share my book collection of vintage books and special edition books like Easton Press and Folio Society and all that stuff. So if you're into books or movies, but definitely I think my channel leans more towards books, but I might get more into movies as time goes on, but for now I'm leaning more towards books. Anyway, if that interests you, you should definitely subscribe to my channel. And yeah, without further ado, let's get right into today's video. Hi, thanks for listening today. In honor of Christmas, I am covering one of my favorite Christmas movies, and that is the 1984 adaptation of A Christmas Carol, directed by Clive Donner. And that is, of course, based on the book by Charles Dickens, which was released in 1843. So to start with my thoughts on the book, despite knowing the story so well, because as I said, this is my favorite Christmas movie. So despite knowing it so well, it was still like a very enjoyable read. And there was more humor in it than I thought there would be. And also at times Dickens will break the fourth wall and, give a side talking to us personally, which was fun. One example being the famous line that is, of course, in all the movies is, "Marley was dead as a doornail." And the book has this line, but then it's followed by saying, "Mind, I don't mean to say that I know of my own knowledge what there is particularly dead about a doornail. I might have inclined myself to regard coffin nail as the deadest piece of ironmongery in the trade, but the wisdom of our ancestors is in the simile, and my unhallowed hands shall not disturb it, or the country's done for. You will, therefore, permit me to repeat emphatically that Marley was dead as a doornail." So just fun little things like that in this book. It is also such a short read, like you could read this in one sitting. It is, 100 pages or something. And yeah, it's no wonder that this has been adapted so many times and is definitely one of the most well-known Christmas movies. And it's just such a great story. So this adaptation that I'm covering is actually a made-for-TV movie, although it was done in the UK, and so they did have a theater release there, but everywhere else it was just a made-for-TV movie. And it took 10 years. It was 10 years later until it was released on VHS, and then of course later on DVD. But for a while it was just, I guess you could only rewatch it when it was played on TV again. And yeah, this is one that my family would watch every Christmas season when I was growing up, so I am partial to it, for sentimental reasons. But I also just think it's a really great adaptation and really well done. Also, the main song they have for the soundtrack is incredible. I love it. I played it on the intro, so you may have noticed that, and that's the song from this movie. So onto the acting, we have George C. Scott, and in my mind, he just is Ebenezer Scrooge. I love his performance in this so much. This is also one of the few, I don't think it's the only one, but it's one of the few adaptations where Scrooge is not wearing his pajamas the entire time. And that is true to the book, because Scrooge, he had taken his jacket off and stuff, and he had his robe on, but he was still in his pants and shirt underneath. So it's accurate to the story, but also George C. Scott, I guess, the thought of filming a whole movie in his pajamas, he was just not willing to do it, apparently. But it fits, because it's true to the book anyway. And then also, as far as Scrooge, he's always saying "bah humbug," and a lot of people, misunderstand the meaning behind that. Humbug is not just him, being annoyed by Christmas. It's more to it than that. So it describes, deceitful efforts to fool people by pretending to fake loftiness or false sincerity. So when Scrooge calls Christmas a humbug, he is claiming that people only pretend to charity and kindness in a scoundrel effort to delude him and each other and themselves. And so in Scrooge's eyes, he thinks that he is the one man honest enough to admit that no one really cares about anyone else. And so for him, every wish for a Merry Christmas is one more deceitful effort to fool him and take advantage of him. And this is a man who has turned to profit because he honestly believes everyone else will someday betray him or abandon him the moment he trusts them. I almost think that's worse than just being annoyed by the holiday, like the fact that he has this self-righteousness about it, kind of thinking that everyone is being fake and he's the only one who's honest about this. And negative people tend to have this outlook, like as if positive people are all a bunch of phonies and they're lying, and the negative people are the honest ones and they're being real. And yeah, they can't comprehend how someone could genuinely feel so charitable and kind, and they're like, you must be lying. Yeah, so that kind of adds another element to it when you take that into consideration when he says that. But on to Bob Cratchit. He is played by David Warner, and Cratchit in this adaptation has more of a personality than he did in the book, and so I enjoyed that there was just more to him, I guess. Also, in the movie, they have Tiny Tim waiting outside for Bob when he gets off of work, which was not in the book. And yeah, it's fine, it's cute. But my thought on that, Tiny Tim is this sickly child, and yet his parents are okay with him waiting out in the very cold British winter for 30 minutes to an hour as he waits for his dad to get off work. If he's so sick, why are they okay with him doing that? But anyway, just my own little complaint there. On to the Christmas ghost. We first have Angela Pleasant, who plays the ghost of Christmas Past. In the book, the spirit actually isn't said to be a female. And the way it's described is, it was a strange figure like a child, yet not so like a child as like an old man, viewed through some supernatural medium, which gave him the appearance of having receded from view and being diminished to a child's proportions. Its hair, which hung about his neck and down its back, was white as if with age, and yet the face had not a wrinkle in it. So it seems like some kind of weird, almost childlike, but not. And yeah, this movie chose to portray it as a woman, and Angela Pleasant is great. Her voice is dubbed over, and people don't know why, at least in what I read, but I never even noticed that before until I read that. But yeah, I liked her in this. And we have Edward Woodward, who plays the ghost of Christmas Present. And this spirit has always been my personal favorite. I just love his personality, his joyful disposition and his empathy and his humor. And yet along with that, he tells it as it is, and he doesn't hold back. While being nice about it, though, in a way. And I have also always loved the end of his visit, when he shows Scrooge ignorance and want. And yeah, it takes the serious turn that you aren't expecting, but it's such a great scene. And yeah, Woodward is just so incredible in this role, and he really just embodies the ghost of Christmas Present, and he looks exactly the way he's described in the book. And also in the book, it talks about how he is continually getting older as their time together progresses. And it says it's because he ages quickly, and he'll be gone once Christmas Day is over, basically. And I noticed this was shown in another adaptation, specifically the Muppet Christmas Carol, which I love. The ghost of Christmas Present is getting older as their time progresses, and that always confused me. But now that I've read the book, I know that, it's something that readers of the book will appreciate when they watch that movie. But yeah, this 1984 version does not have him getting older, though, as the night goes on. Also, another thing, in the book, when describing this ghost, it includes the detail saying, girded around its middle was an antique scabbard, but no sword was in it, and the ancient sheath was eaten up with rust. And I take that to mean that he doesn't battle and he doesn't get into, contention and all that. And as they're walking around, he spreads the Christmas spirit. And when two people are arguing, he has this torch, and there's some kind of dust he spreads on people when they're arguing. And when they're touched by this, they're like, oh, they're in good spirits again, and they apologize and go about their day. And then we have Roger Rees, who is wonderful as Fred. And obviously, like I said, I'm a little biased here because I feel like everybody is perfectly cast. But again, yeah, I don't know. This is the movie I grew up watching. But Reese is wonderful as Fred, and I think, yeah, he just really embodies the character, as they all do in this movie, I believe. And there's a line in the book which describes Fred that reads, "If he should happen by any unlikely chance to know a man more blessed in a laugh than Scrooge's nephew, all I can say is, I should like to know him too. Introduce him to me and I'll cultivate his acquaintance." And yeah, Fred, he's just such a great character. And even though he makes fun of Scrooge in the book, which we will get to later, he truly has a kind heart. And he says of Scrooge, "I am sorry for him. I couldn't be angry with him if I tried. Who suffers by his ill whims? Himself always. Here he takes it into his head to dislike us and won't even come to dine with us." And so yeah, he has the maturity to know that he doesn't need to harbor these negative, bitter feelings towards Scrooge, because by Scrooge's actions, he's only hurting himself anyway, And so Fred realizes that he doesn't need to have like this dislike for Scrooge, because Scrooge is only hurting himself anyhow. And so onto the character of Scrooge and just like his personality and humor in this, in both book and movie. So like I said, in the book, there was more humor than I had expected. And this is my first time reading Dickens, so I don't know if this is common for his writing or not. But one section explains why Scrooge uses his humor, and it's when he sees Marley, he says the line, "There's more gravy than grave about you, whatever you are." And then it goes on to read, "Scrooge was not much in the habit of cracking jokes, nor did he feel in his heart by any means waggish then. The truth is that he tried to be smart as a means of distracting his own attention and keeping down his terror, for the spectre's voice disturbed the very marrow in his bones." I also really enjoyed getting to know Scrooge's inner thoughts, which we're not able to do in the movie. Like, the movie conveys it in other ways, but obviously the book, you're just able to get to know a character even more intimately. And here's another passage from Marley's visit when he asks Marley if he would like to sit down. It reads, "Scrooge asked the question because he didn't know whether a ghost so transparent might find himself in a condition to take a chair, and felt that in the event of its being impossible, it might involve the necessity of an embarrassing explanation. But the ghost sat down on the opposite side of the fireplace as if he were quite used to it." Then in the book and movie, we have the part where the ghost of Christmas Present says she is there for his welfare. And in the book it says, "Scrooge expressed himself much obliged, but could not help thinking that a night of unbroken rest would have been much more conducive to that end." And yeah, in the movie they have this as well, and he says it out loud. And in the book, even though he thinks it, he or she knows his thoughts. But yeah, that too is just another funny... I don't know, like he has a bad attitude about it, of course, but yeah, I just enjoyed the humor there. And yeah, the movie conveys that humor as well, and sometimes it's a bitter humor, but yeah, I enjoyed that they included that. I don't know how many other adaptations do, but I like that this one has it. And then also in the book and movie, there are a few times, like it seems like it was more often in the book, where Scrooge is asking the spirits or Marley for some kind words and to show him some tenderness. And I thought this was interesting because, like, they are being kind. They're not being rude, and yet they're also being straightforward with him. And so he's not used to dealing with someone who is outspoken and telling him like it is and being honest. And so he doesn't like it, which is understandable. But yeah, I thought that was interesting, where just because people are being honest with him, he takes it as them being mean and being like, don't you have some kind words for me? And when he asks Marley that, Marley is like, "No, I don't." You don't need kind words. You need someone who's going to be honest and give it to you straight so that you can turn your life around. So I like that part. And it was just, yeah, I thought it was fitting. And on to Marley. Frank Finlay plays Marley in the movie. And I thought he was excellent, of course, and as described in the book. And the book even has the description of how he has like this rag tie that he puts around his head to keep his jaw in place. And yeah, when I was a kid, that scene in the movie always kind of freaked me out. But yeah, it's a nice detail though. Anyway, when Marley leaves in the book, he opens the window and Scrooge can see out the window and there's all these other spirits flying past and they're just like wailing and miserable. In the movie, we don't see them, but we do hear the shrieks and the cries. And so even just the audio of that was a nice touch, and I like that. In the book, though, there's an added scene where Scrooge is looking out the window, seeing these ghosts go by, and he's watching Marley. And as Marley flies by, Marley sees a woman who is in need of help, but Marley isn't able to help her. And it reads, "He cried piteously at being unable to assist a wretched woman with an infant whom he saw before upon a doorstep. The misery with them all was clearly that they sought to interfere for good in human matters and had lost the power forever. And so they weren't willing to help people when they were alive. And now that they want to help people, it's too late and they can't. Yeah, I think it's interesting hearing different ideas of the afterlife. Even if Dickens doesn't actually think this is what it's like, it's still interesting to think about that and how, if that's a version of hell where you want to be better, but you missed your chance and now you can't. And I don't know. I don't think that's what's going to happen in the afterlife. I think even after you're dead, if you want to change and be a better person, you'll have the opportunity to do so. But it's an interesting take on that. And so the differences with Christmas Past, one change, I guess the biggest change really, is that in the movie, we see him interacting with his father, whereas in the book, his father is spoken about and how, he doesn't have a good relationship with his dad, but we never actually see them interact. Whereas in the movie, the dad comes and picks him up with his daughter, Scrooge's sister. And we also learn why his dad doesn't like him, and it's because the mom died while giving birth to Ebenezer. And I don't remember that being said in the book, so I think that's something the movie added. And then onto my favorite, The Ghost of Christmas Present. So in the book, for one, a big change is that they go to a lot of different houses and like flying all over the world or the country. And whereas in the movie, he just goes to 3 different homes. But the book reads, much they saw and far they went, and many homes they visited, but always with a happy end. The spirit stood beside sick beds, and they were cheerful. On foreign lands, and they were close at home. By struggling men, and they were patient in their greater hope. By poverty, and it was rich. In almshouse, hospital, and goal, and misery's every refuge. Where vain man in his little brief authority had not made fast the door, and barred the spirit out, he left his blessing, and taught Scrooge his precepts. So I like that, like the spirit of Christmas Present, bringing comfort to these people who aren't in great situations. And yeah, and I think the Christmas spirit can do that. Like there's something about the holiday season, specifically Christmas, which is my favorite holiday, by the way. There's something about it where it does bring a sense of comfort to you, even when you're going through something hard. And in both, they go to the Cratchit house, and when the spirit tells Scrooge Tim will most likely die, the spirit uses Scrooge's own words, saying, let him die and decrease the surplus population, to which the spirit follows that up with, so perhaps in the future you will hold your tongue until you have discovered where the surplus population is and who it is. It may well be that in the sight of heaven you are more worthless and less fit to live than millions like this poor man's child. And the book has, I took that line from the movie, but the book has a similar line as well, and such a great scene. And then, yeah, like I said, the section with the spirit was always my favorite in the movie, and I loved it in the book. And the movie has the added scene, which, like I said, the book, they visit a lot of different people, but one they don't specifically describe is a scene that is in the movie where they go and visit a family who is homeless. And yeah, such a great part. And then at the end of his visit with the Ghost of Christmas Present, in the book, Scrooge notices something that looks like a claw coming from the bottom of the spirit's robe. And this is when he is shown ignorance and want, the book reading, because Scrooge asks like who they are. And the book goes on to read, they are man's, said the spirit, looking down upon them, and they cling to me, appealing from their fathers. This boy's ignorance, the girl is want. Beware of them both, and all of their degree, but most of all, beware this boy, for on his brow I see that is written, which is doom, unless the writing be erased. Deny it, cried the spirit, stretching out his hand towards the city. Slander those who tell it. Admit it for your factious purposes, and make it worse, and bide the end. Have they no refuge or resource? Cried Scrooge. Are there no prisons? Said the spirit, turning on him for the last time with his own words. Are there no workhouses? And so again, using Scrooge's words against him. But yeah, the scene in the movie, like, it's so startling because the spirit is just kind of like happy and funny, and yeah, and then suddenly it takes a dark turn and he's warning him. And he has these like 2 children under his robe that are just like super skinny and dirty. And yeah, it's a great scene in the movie though, and I really like it. It's a great scene in the book too, but I think something about the movie, like it has the visuals, and yeah, he shows him ignorance and want right after when they're out visiting the homeless family. And yeah, such a great scene. Anyway, when they visit Fred's house, Scrooge's nephew, the biggest change in regards to this is the game they play. So in the movie, they play Simile, where Fred walks around being like, as small as or as bright as, and they have to say, you know, the proper term that comes at the end of that simile. And so he says to his wife, as tight as, and she doesn't know the answer, and so she's just guessing, like, as tight as your Uncle Ebenezer's purse strings, because they had been talking about how miserly he was. Whereas in the book, they play a game that's like 21 questions, basically, where Fred has an idea of something, and as people ask him yes or no questions, they guess what it is he's thinking of. And they make it seem like he's describing like some kind of beast almost, but it ends up being Scrooge. So in the book, Fred is kind of making fun of Scrooge, whereas in the movie, he was more innocent and it was just his wife being silly. So yeah, so that one was a bit different, but I enjoy both versions. And so on to the Ghost of Christmas Future. In the book, the spirit doesn't talk at all, whereas in the movie, like, it has, whenever he's like pointing, the sound he makes is like a screeching gate opening, and I really like that. It really adds to the eeriness of the scenes with him. And there's a scene in the book that I really like that wasn't in the movie, so I wanted to share that. And so they see the man who is dead with the sheet on top of him, and Scrooge, like the movie, he's like just not able to uncover it and look at who the man is. And then they also see the guys at the stock exchange talking about someone's death. And then they see the people who had robbed the home and are selling the goods of the dead man. And when they're at these people, watching these people, you know, do this trade, Scrooge says that, you know, show me someone who has some emotion about this man's death. And so the spirit takes him to a home of a woman who is anxiously awaiting her husband's return. And when he arrives, she asks what news he has of them being past due on their rent and if their landlord has relented or not. And then the scene continues with, he is past relenting, said her husband. He is dead. She was a mild and patient creature, if her face spoke truth, but she was thankful in her soul to hear it, and she said so with clasped hands. She prayed for forgiveness the next moment and was sorry, but the first was the emotion of her heart, and it was a happier house for this man's death. The only emotion that the ghost could show him, caused by the event, was one of pleasure. And yeah, that was such a great scene. And I wish the movie had included it, but the movie, like, they see... I think they see the man's body covered in the sheet, and he asks to see some emotion or feeling, and they're taken to the people who are trading the goods. And so he's like, the only emotion here is greed, blah, 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 whatever. But yeah, that part in the book I really loved, which I don't know if Scrooge was a landlord in the movie, like at the stock exchange, he's talking about like trading corn, but he could be doing the stocks as well as being a landlord, I guess. I don't know. So onto the Cratchit family. Honestly, the scenes in the book and movie involving the Cratchits are basically the same. Like, I can't really think of any significant changes that are made from book to movie. Aside, like I said, Bob Cratchit had more personality, but that was more so like when they're in the office. When he's with Scrooge in the office, he just has more personality than he did in the book. Whereas the book, the only time we get a feel for who he is when they go to visit his home with the spirits. But yeah, everyone, all the actors who play the different members of the Cratchit family are wonderful. You know, the mom not wanting to toast to Scrooge is a great scene. And then we have Anthony Walters, who is very cute, is little tiny Tim. And this was the first movie he was ever in. And since then, I guess he's acted in a few things, but he's also done like behind the scenes work, which is cool. And then to talk about like Scrooge's changing views through the course of this book and movie. Like, as the story goes along, of course, Scrooge starts to see the error of his ways, and viewing the past, he sees what Belle had said to him and how he has changed, and he tried to justify himself when, you know, she was acknowledging how he cares more about money or whatever, and the young him says, "This is the even-handed dealing of the world," he said. "There is nothing on which is so hard as poverty, and there is nothing it professes to condemn with such severity as the pursuit of wealth." "You fear the world too much," she answered gently. "All your hopes have merged into the hope of being beyond the chance of its sordid reproach. I have seen your nobler aspirations fall off one by one until the master passion, gain, engrosses you." And I love that line where she says, "You fear the world too much." Like, such a great line. But then, you know, also along with the Ghost of Christmas Past, when he sees Fezziwig, Scrooge does acknowledge, he says the line, "The happiness he gave is quite as great as if it cost a fortune." And so obviously Fezziwig is an important part of his past to go revisit, because it was this man who wasn't considered wealthy by any means. And yet he spread this happiness and cheer that was so much more important than, spreading money. Like he was spreading something that was worth so much more. And then another interesting part is when first meeting the ghost of Christmas Present, it reads, Scrooge entered timidly and hung his head before the spirit. He was not the dogged Scrooge he had been, and though the spirit's eyes were clear and kind, he did not like to meet them. And I like that too, because the ghost of Christmas Present, like I said, he's just so full of the Christmas spirit and the charity and the love and the joy. And going back to Humbug, Scrooge doesn't believe people are being genuine when they act that way, and he thinks they're all just a bunch of phonies. But here, he can't deny the genuineness about this man, and it makes him not want to even look him in the eye because of it. And then as Scrooge continues to learn the error of his ways, there's a part in the book where, earlier on, before this all happens, a caroler comes into the office and Scrooge just turns him away. And then later, when he's with one of the spirits, he's reflecting and the book reads, "What's the matter?" asked the spirit. "Nothing," said Scrooge. "Nothing. There was just a boy singing a Christmas carol at my door last night. I should like to have given him something, that's all." And so earlier we saw how Marley was regretting not being able to help people around him. And so Scrooge, he's learning that before it's too late, before he died, because, maybe he can't help that particular caroler right now, but it's not too late for him to just change going forward, whereas Marley can't. And then also earlier on, he's more annoyed by the spirits, like how he was thinking to the spirit of Christmas past, how, if she wants to help him, she should just let him get a good night's sleep. And then as time goes on, though, by the end, when he meets the ghost of Christmas past, it says, "But nothing doubting that, to whomsoever they applied, they had some latent moral for his own improvement. He resolved to treasure up every word he heard and everything he saw, and especially to observe the shadow of himself when it appeared." And so, we slowly see this change happening over Scrooge in both book and movie. And the ending scene is so wonderful, and George C. Scott is great in that scene when, just the giddiness and the joy he feels and the change of heart he's had. And, that whole part where he's asking the boy to go, bring the giant goose over so he can send it to the Cratchits, and just a great scene, great ending in both book and movie. And when it comes to book or movie, this is just my all-time favorite Christmas story, and that's why I chose to cover it. And like I said, it's just no wonder just that this has gone down in history, and all this time later, it is still remembered and it's still being adapted. There are so many adaptations of this, including ones like The Grinch, which isn't a direct adaptation, but it definitely inspired The Grinch. And in terms of comparing this particular adaptation with the book, I don't know. I'm probably biased because, like I said, I've been watching this movie ever since I was a kid, and I just love it so much. And so I'm going to have to go with the movie on this one. And like I said, there's certain scenes that are the same in book to movie, but something about the movie, seeing it, the visuals of it just enhance the scene so much more. And it also has the eeriness to it at times where it's kind of creepy. Not in a nightmare, it's not going to give you nightmares, but I liked the creepiness it had, more in the beginning with Marley, as well as with the Ghost of Christmas Past, the Ghost of Christmas Future. And it follows the book very close, and it's sharing the same beautiful message that the book shared. But this book is a great read, though, of course. And like I said, Dickens had more humor in there than I thought, so I really enjoyed that. And it seems wrong in this scenario to be picking the movie over the book that has started this whole thing. But that's what I'm going to do. Dickens does describe things vividly, but the movie just portrays it all just so wonderfully and so beautifully. The set, the wardrobe, the acting, the music, it's wonderful. And because there are so many adaptations of this, it would be kind of fun for every Christmas season for me to compare the book with a different adaptation, since there's so many out there. So if you have a favorite version of A Christmas Carol, and it's not, whether it is or isn't the 1984 version, I would love if you comment down below on my YouTube video and share what your favorite adaptation is. Because honestly, I haven't seen that many. I've seen The Muppet Christmas Carol, which I love, but it's different. And then there was a black and white one I saw, and then, I don't know, I'm sure there have been others, but I've just stuck to this version because it's just so good. But share with me what your favorite adaptation of A Christmas Carol is, or just what your favorite Christmas movie is in general. But for next week, I will be posting a another book and movie comparison, and that will be The Revenant, which is a movie that was nominated for so many Oscars, and DiCaprio won an Oscar for Best Actor for that movie. So yeah, I will be comparing the book and movie with that next week, and it's a really good one, so you guys should tune in. But I will go ahead and wrap things up in today's podcast. And I just want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas, and I hope you guys are having a great holiday season. And God bless us, everyone.